Gaining language, what to consider and how to start. Hi, my name is Caroline Woeber. I am a speech language pathologist at Children's Hospital, Colorado, and I am an augmentative and alternative communication specialist. I am also a team lead for the augmentative and alternative communication camps we have here at the hospital. And I am a part of the multidisciplinary clinic Chromosome 15, which here at the hospital includes genetics, neurology, developmental pediatrics, OT, PT, as well as rehab and speech. So the big question that I'm hoping we can address today is, what can I do to help my child communicate? And I really think that this is a much bigger question than that, because ultimately by looking at gaining access to communication, we are also gaining access to language and literacy as well. So by the end of this presentation, I hope that we will have a good understanding of defining what augmentative and alternative communication is. I want to introduce the language journey and how that looks with using augmentative and alternative communication, as well as how to find a speech language pathologist who specializes in AAC. We will then review what the AAC evaluation process looks like and the importance of communication partners, because without you, our kids are going to have a hard time learning language. They already know English or whatever language is your primary language at home, and we need our communication partners to also focus on using the AAC system as well. So what exactly is augmentative and alternative communication? And for the duration of this program, I will be referring to that as AAC. So I like to think of it as unaided and aided strategies for communicating. And we can think of this as like music. So we can be very musical without requiring any additional instruments. We can clap, we can sing, we can tap our feet or pat our legs. We can make a lot of sound and music without needing anything additional. We just need ourselves. So that would be what unaided communication would be, or unaided music. That's going to be everything that we use our bodies to express our communication. Everything from eye gaze, facial expressions, joint attention, gestures, and we can think of sign language, and I'll get to that a little bit more. Whereas with aided language, aided communication tools, aided AAC, that's going to be more of the things where we need something in addition. So going back to the example of music, when we think about making music and we use an instrument, that's going to be like an aided music process, because we're going to have spoons or a violin or drumsticks. We're going to have something that we physically have to manipulate. And same with aided AAC. This is going to be any kind of writing tool, photo, drawing, symbols, as well as phones, computers, tablets, and speech generating devices. So when we think about unaided AAC, we can see here eye gaze is going to be really key in a basketball game. These individuals are having to look at their teammates or maybe not look at their teammates to be able to deceive the other team, and they're using eye gaze predominantly to do that. In addition, they may also vocalize, or they may call out, call the person's name, but ultimately that's going to be part of the process. So usually with our unaided communication attempts, or unaided AAC, this is going to be a lot of different things layered on top of each other. So one of these things that we may layer is eye gaze. Next, with unaided AAC, we can use facial expressions to express a lot, whether we're happy or sad or tired or frustrated. And these can be really, really powerful as a component to our communication. Joint attention is a great strategy when you're looking between the person you're talking to and what you're really trying to talk about and emphasize. You're checking in, you're tuning in, maybe you're trying to get the cookies on the shelf and you're looking at them and your communication partner to really indicate what you're trying to say. Gestures are a great way to communicate, whether we want something to stop or if we just want a little bit or a lot. It can be really helpful to use our gestures or use our hands to help better express ourselves. And lastly, I want to talk about sign language as unaided AAC. And I do want to truly recognize that American Sign Language and other signed languages are in fact languages. And that is not what I'm specifically speaking about in this sense for unaided AAC. What I'm saying here is more of using I love you or more paired with verbal language, which would be very different than using a signed language solely, as a means to getting your message across quickly. It can be a tool for individuals who have very minimal communication to be able to express themselves. So then looking here at aided AAC, we're going to switch now to using tools. And the first tool that we use all the time are pens, pencils, crayons, markers. We jot notes down so that we know what to get from the grocery store. We write down directions. We have a lot of reasons to write things down if we're able to write and if we're able to use a system that is meaningful to us. Which kind of goes into my next idea. So this can be drawings, photos, and symbols, as well as orthographic writing. So that's actual writing words. And here we have a map, so a drawing of the campsite, but we can also use photos as well as symbols to fully describe what we're experiencing or what we're wanting to talk about. So we can use all of these tools to help us talk about our camping experience. And lastly, I want to talk about, and I'm really grouping everything here. This is such a big bucket. And I would really encourage you to go check out some of the other presentations that really dive into the different devices and the different setups. I just don't quite have the time here to discuss it at the length that would be really needed to give it its full value. But aided AAC also includes phones, tablets, computers, as well as like the GoTalk 9 here is a mid-tech communication system, as well as using different kinds of communication apps. And what I love about these different tools is that we all use them. We all use our hands, we use our voices, we use our cell phones and our pens. We all use these different tools, and we really want to provide these same tools to our kids. So let's take a look now at the language journey and really thinking about what that looks like specifically with AAC. So thinking about expected language development, what do we see a child doing? We see a child, a baby, infant, very early on, crying, smiling, making eye gaze with us. They then may start to develop gestures such as pointing, and then they get to words, phrases, sentences, stories, and eventually conversation. Some of those conversations may be a little tangential at first, but then they really shape to meaningful communication, telling stories and things like that. In addition, we have a variety of things that we are communicating in that development. So your child may first start reaching, looking, or grabbing, and maybe they're trying to express that an object is mine. Your child very quickly may learn to push, turn, or shake their head to say all done or no. And your child will probably want to gain your attention. So your child calls you over and they may tell you here or mommy here. As they continue to develop around 24 to 36 months, we see directing really coming in, if not earlier, maybe even closer to 18 months. So your child pushes you, points or tugs and says, go. And then your child may hand you a toy or object to fix and say, help. What does this look like specifically with Angelman syndrome? Generally, we know that spoken language is limited. We know that gestures are a strength, that individuals with Angelman syndrome do have a strong desire to communicate, and they have a strong desire to socially engage. These are such wonderful strengths, and we really, really need to capitalize on them. These are mostly focused on expressive language, and the reason why is because we're still learning a lot about the receptive language of individuals with Angelman syndrome. So for the receptive language, we always want to presume that they have the capability to learn, and we want to show them and give them access to as many opportunities to communicate. When looking very specifically at spoken language within Angelman syndrome, there is several articles in a variety of different well, there's one article that I'm specifically referencing here. It's the Lossy article from 2001. There's been other articles since that touch on this, but maybe don't dive into specific numbers. So we're looking at deletion. Individuals with the phenotype of deletion have generally less than 3 words. Individuals with uniparietal disomy usually have less than 10 words. Imprinting defect have less than 10 words, and mutation has less than 10 words. However, I do want to stress that this is one article that I'm specifically referencing. There have been articles that have come out specifically related to mosaicism that looks at individuals who are using between 20 to 1,000 words. 20% of the individuals that were identified in the article had over 1,000 words, or just about 1,000 words, which I think is really exciting and really, we need to think about that and continuing to support verbal language. However, if there's an unmet communication need, 1,000 words is a lot of words, and 10 words is very few. We probably don't have all of our communication needs met with 10 words, 20 words, or even 50 words. And we certainly don't have that opportunity to develop the depth of communication and meaningful relationships with just those amount of words spoken verbally. That means, though, that we still have a ton of opportunity to gain language, maybe we have a ton of opportunity to gain language, and we have the opportunity to do that through AAC. So I want your child to be as verbal as possible, because that's absolutely going to be the fastest mode of communication. However, we want to make sure that they're developing their language as well, and we can do that with AAC. So when your child is looking, reaching, grabbing, we can pair that with a picture on the device and say mine. We can use a gesture, point to ourselves. We can be working on all done. We can be having your child point and say here, find the button on the device. Your child can continue to follow that same expected developmental track. We're just going to do it in a slightly different way. And that's going to be through using a variety of tools and strategies. And we can really dive into that a little bit more once we know a little bit more about your child's strengths. So one way we can identify all the different ways that your child is communicating is using something called the communication matrix. This is a free online form for parents. If you're doing more than 5 of these a year, then you're going to have to pay. For many years, it has been free. So what this looks at specifically is all the different ways that your child may be communicating, but through something other than spoken language. It absolutely acknowledges spoken language, but looking at maybe if your child is really jiggling the door handle, that they may be, or that they are communicating something to you. They're trying to tell you help. They're trying to tell you open. And how we can then teach our child language by giving them access to communication through sign, gesture, vocalizations, or the device. So when should an individual with Angelman syndrome start considering AAC? And the answer is right now. And the AAC evaluation is going to be a great first step to be able to accomplish what we need to know. And that is, what is your child currently communicating and what would we like to see them communicating? I think it's really important for parents and caregivers to identify what would be the most meaningful thing for your child to be able to communicate to you as independently as possible. So why do we need to get an AAC evaluation? It's because, like I've been mentioning, we really want to identify your child's strengths. And specifically to individuals with Angelman syndrome, we have some considerations that we specifically need to examine, such as motor access. Depending on the phenotype of your child, they may have a tremor, which may need additional supports to consider how to get them to have the best access as possible so that they're as efficient as possible. We need to look at visual access. Sometimes cortical visual impairment can be an issue or can be a deficit that we need to think about really modifying the pictures so that the child has the best access. And we need to look at language use. At what level is your child communicating? If they're 2, they may not be looking at complete sentences at the moment, right? So thinking about what kind of path they are on their current development. And then I think a huge component to any successful AAC evaluation or ongoing AAC therapy and implementation is motivation. Knowing what motivates your child is huge in the consideration of how to get them talking. And I always give this example, but no one wants to hear about my taxes. And so I'm not going to program a specific button on the front of my page to talk about that. Because I'm not motivated to talk about that. And so really thinking about what does motivate your child and what doesn't, and thinking about how we organize the vocabulary effectively to get that across. Let's also explore a variety of tools and strategies. So really getting a chance in the AAC evaluation to see how your child is responding to these different methods of communicating. And what I think can be so valuable to families, especially when you're just starting out with this process, is having a professional, a speech therapist, to guide you through the process. This is a really overwhelming area, and having someone who really can help you problem solve, think what is going to be the most successful for your child in the academic setting, as well as in the educational setting, or excuse me, in the home setting. We need to be thinking about all of these different places and thinking how to best support your child. So during an AAC evaluation, your child will demonstrate their ability to use words, signs, gestures, pictures paired with voice output and speech generating devices. And from this, we may be looking at, we most often are looking at how can we use all of these tools to really support your child, because I'm here using my hands. I can't not use my hands. So I would never expect your child to stop using their hands to gesture and point. We all use our hands. So looking at how we can layer on our gestures onto other forms of communication so that our message is really clear. During an AAC evaluation, you'll be looking to see, does your child have unmet communication needs? If speaking is not meeting your child's communication, I would absolutely say some kind of AAC system, whether that's single message communicators, so Big Mac buttons that you press, to low-tech pictures, as well as high-tech devices. I think all of those are really important to be considering, and considering their use over time. And really seeing how your child responds to those. And as your child's language grows, likely you will be needing to reassess their skills, reassess the AAC process or AAC system to see what they would really benefit at that given time, or make modifications to the current vocabulary you have. So I would not say that the AAC process, the evaluation process, is one and done. I would say that this is something that's always worth reevaluating, especially as your child grows and as their needs change. From an AAC evaluation, we can have several recommendations. We can be looking at speech therapy, where we're still focusing on play, social interaction, sounds, and words. We may be looking at also incorporating in some AAC tools and strategies, whether that be with gestures, signs, pictures, or speech generating devices. We may be looking at diagnostic therapy, which when I refer to that, that to me is 4 to 8 weeks of weekly therapy, looking at a device over time, or different devices over time, excuse me. So 1 week it would be LAMP Words for Life. The next week it would be Word Power 60 or Word Power 20. The following week it would be Snap Plus Core First, followed by Prolo Quo, or different apps like that. Pod, we can be looking at a variety of those, but giving at least 1 hour to really focus on how your child is learning to use that device. And then really comparing to see, okay, in this time period, which one was the easiest for the child to gain and learn? Which one did the family learn easiest? Because that's going to be a part of it. It has to be a language or system that the family is comfortable using as well. We may be looking at, from the evaluation, going ahead and pursuing the funding for a speech generating device through your insurance, or third-party payers, or private funding sources. And we may also be recommending parent training, such as programs like Canon or other models of parent coaching. So what is the funding process like for speech generating devices? And I have a little example here. It's a big purchase getting a device, just like it's a big purchase buying a car or getting a new couch. And we really want to have a similar experience. I would love when I go buy a new couch, don't do it often, of course, but I go to the store, I sit in each chair. I think, is this something that's going to be comfortable? Is it something that's going to be durable and last? I will often measure the chair, making sure, one, not only is it going to fit in my living room, but is it going to fit through my doorway? And I want to check the price, make sure that it's something that's reasonable within the budget that I have. And likewise, I may go to several stores, do several comparisons. And likewise with a car and with a speech generating device specifically. So pictures in isolation, that would be like individual photos or specific picture communication symbols through a program like BoardMaker. These symbols are free as long as you have a speech therapist that can get you access to those, or a provider that can get you access to those. But a speech generating device can be anywhere from $5,000 up. And so really wanting to make sure that we make a choice that is best for you and your family, because this is a big purchase. And so likewise, when thinking of a big purchase, we want to go to the place that has those devices. We want to test them out. We want to make sure it's an appropriate size for your child, whether that be extremely portable, or looking at whether it's so maybe smaller so that your child can wear it without toppling over. Or we may be looking at, is it big enough to support my child's visual needs and fine motor needs? So there's a lot of considerations, and you really want to try each of them out to find the best fit. And you want to make sure that your insurance covers it. And we'll get into a little bit more about that, as well as doing some comparisons. So when looking at the physical device, this is going to be like the actual machine. We have several different layers. We have the physical machine considerations, then we have the actual software considerations, as well as other considerations. So when looking at an actual tablet, is it durable? We want a strong screen that when we drop it, it's not going to immediately shatter. And thank goodness that there's screen protectors out there. So if you're nervous, I would definitely try and figure out, is that screen protector included in the cost, or how can you buy one aftermarket? We want a good case. So again, that it's durable and has a nice rigidity to it, or cush to it, so that if it does fall, it's not going to be completely damaged. We want portability if your child is ambulatory, or we want to be looking at a mount if your child is in a wheelchair or stroller. I think size and weight is really important here, thinking about, if your child is very small, that maybe a giant 12-inch device is going to take up half their body length. So we want to make sure that it's portable for them, so that they're not feeling totally encumbered and don't want to carry their device. We ultimately want your child to be carrying the device with them everywhere, because it's their voice. We want them to have that ownership of it. And we may also be looking at carrying cases and shoulder straps as well. There's several different kinds. They have the harness, which provides a little bit more support through the shoulders, as well as a messenger bag style kind of design, where we can sling it over our shoulder rather than just one shoulder. Speakers can be really important for a lot of times our kids are in a classroom or in at home. We don't necessarily need an extremely loud speaker, but hopefully you're bringing the device when you have it with you everywhere. And that includes to the library, where we want to make sure that the volume is down quite a bit, but then also when we're out at the park, or out maybe at a theme park, right, where things can get really loud. So having an external speaker that can really amplify the device is very important. Knowing the warranty. So this would be whether the device is covered for 1, 2, 3, 5 years. And this really varies depending on the device that you're getting. Local device representatives are not always available. So the device representatives here in Colorado are wonderful. I work with them very closely, as they're often providing training to not only parents, but then also parents, caregivers, and professionals. So going out to school teams and providing supports there as well. And technical support. We want to make sure that if there is an issue with your device, that you're able to get it repaired and getting it repaired quickly. So language considerations. These are going to be specifically related to the software that your child is using. So what comes on the device, whether that's an app, whether that's maybe even just a button, like thinking about what language your child has access to on a GoTalk or a TechSpeak or a Big Mac. There's a story that I love of an individual that I've worked with where she was given a Big Mac button that said, I need to use the bathroom. Guess what? She didn't have to use the bathroom all the time. So she ended up just throwing the device off of her tray table, thinking about how we can support our individuals and making sure that they have access to the language they want and need. So while single message communicators like Big Macs can be really helpful for participation and engagement and things like story time, it's not always it doesn't target the language that we want our child to grow with. And same with a picture communication system like a picture exchange, such as PECs, that can be really limiting as well, because it doesn't have the robust language that we're looking for. And a robust system includes things like a keyboard, a variety of core words, as well as fringe. And core words are really the words that make up our language. But we can also recognize too that not everyone is immediately ready for the device. The family may not be immediately ready for the device. So what kind of steps can we put in there? And I think Big Macs and picture exchange are a place to start, but not a place to end. We also want to make sure that the language, if your family is bilingual, that you have access to the languages that you are using at home or in other environments. So that can really make a decision for what happens when making a device choice. Organization is going to be how the device is organized, and we have several different options. When looking specifically at a grid-based system, so you see here I have a grid, can be a categorical organization. So that's the idea that I have my core words, but when I want to say spaghetti, that I need to go to my groups, and then I need, or my all words list, and then I need to go to food to then find spaghetti, right? And that may even be on a further page under lunch or dinner. Whereas other systems include more of a semantic compaction, and that they're organized semantically or by the groups of words in relation. So we may find after hitting the word eat, we can then find hungry and spaghetti and eat. It is a way of organizing the language that's just a little bit different than a true categorical system. Motor planning is our next topic, and this is the idea that when I first started out typing on a keyboard, I did not need to, or I had to look at the keys to figure out, okay, where's S? And I was kind of pecking, right? But over time, I really learned where the keys were, and I started looking up and not needing to rely on looking at the keyboard as much. And really that's the fluency that we're looking for developing for our kids, so that when they are communicating with someone, they don't necessarily have to look specifically at the individual keys, but they can maintain eye contact and continue communicating. But that is quite the skill to learn. We can also think of motor planning as being, I like to think of the example going into a grocery store. My grocery store, I go to the same one every week and everything is laid out the same. Well, one week they were under construction and everything that I had originally learned about where the milk is and where the cereal is had completely changed. And I quickly learned that my grocery shopping took twice as long because I was having to search for everything. So thinking about how we keep the buttons in the same location so that we're as efficient as possible because we're not having to search as much for the words where we already know they're located. Photos, symbols, and icons. So for some kids, they really need that photo, especially to begin with, but ultimately that is not a requirement. We want our kids to be able to learn to use symbols and icons because having a picture of the exact cup may not allow us to be as flexible with, oh, that cup just means drink. Also considering that some symbol sets now are being more diverse and representing a wider group of people. So how do we look at representing your family and your child? And we can make that consideration as well when choosing the language. So grid versus visual scenes. We've talked a lot about grids. I wanted to touch on visual scenes, and this is one example of a visual scene where we have a laundry room, and if we tap on different components, maybe the ironing board, it says, I have to iron my shirt, or time to iron, or get the iron out, or tap on the laundry basket and be able to say, I need to wash my clothes, or time to put into the machine. It's a picture that provides a lot of context and is a way for especially very young communicators to learn how to use a different kind of grid or a different kind of access to a visual scene so that they're able to really learn about using communication in their environment and it matches what they currently see. Navigation, I kind of touched on this before. When we were looking for spaghetti, we really had to, go so many layers deep on a grid-based system. And that navigation requires a lot of patience, and maybe our child with Angelman syndrome doesn't have a lot of patience, or maybe is inattentive at the time. And so thinking about what would be most successful for your child may be a page that has very limited navigation, so that they're able to get to the words that they want to say as quickly as possible, or thinking about what kind of vocabulary system would allow them to be as successful as possible without too much navigation. The voice, I think, can be really important to consider. So making sure that if the child identifies as female, that then we have a female voice so that they feel like it truly is representative of them. And likewise, thinking about age as well. If the child is younger or older, making sure that the voice matches where they are in their development. So the final language consideration is going to be supporting alternative access. Alternative access is for individuals who aren't able to touch the device on the screen with a finger or their hand effectively and efficiently. So we may consider other options, such as using our eyes, our elbows, shoulders, head, any other part of our body to gain access to the language. And this requires a little bit more problem solving. This is typically for individuals who have more difficulty with the volitional control of their hands or other parts. And lastly, I want us to talk about funding considerations, because I think that this can be a really huge hurdle for a lot of families. If proceeding with a high-tech device, it's going to be really important to know what your insurance will or will not cover. Or if you don't even have insurance, what are your options? Do you have to get a device from one of the big name companies? And the answer is no. You can pay out of pocket, and it can be considerably cheaper. You need to call your insurance to check to see if the plan is even covered, and know that your insurance will only cover a device once every 5 years. I've listed 2 codes here that are the ones that I predominantly use when recommending a robust communication system. So this is going to be a speech generating device that has a large vocabulary and includes a keyboard, as well as all of the features that we've already talked about. And I think that as a part of this, well, why can't you just go out and buy your own app and step aside or bypass this entire process of going through an AAC evaluation. And I really think it comes back to that fact of having specialized expertise to know which device is really going to be the best for you and your family. In addition to that, I wanted to make sure to make a note that the funding process varies greatly from state to state, insurance company to insurance company. And the general process, I've laid it out here, but you will definitely want someone who's familiar with the process in your state to be able to guide you on the individual steps that are needed and the requirements for your insurance. So typically we start out, at least here at Children's, with an AAC evaluation or a diagnostic therapy. We will also take the time to gather all the paperwork, and this can include IEPs as well as documents from your physician. And also trial devices, looking at different ones at each session or a bunch of devices in one session. We'll then gather all of this documentation. We'll write a nice long funding report, and we'll submit that report to the device company. The device company is great at checking for accuracy, following up on any missed components to the report or to missed components of the paperwork in general. And then they will submit it to insurance on the family's behalf. They will then let the family know if the device has been approved or denied by insurance. And if a device is denied, that's where I really still like to be a part of the process, because there are many options here, at least in the state of Colorado, for us to continue to troubleshoot and what third-party options are available for payment or coverage of the device. I also want to follow up on some of these caveats that device companies themselves cannot complete an evaluation. They cannot make that final recommendation, and there's really possibility of bias there because they're wanting their product to sell. And at the same time, though, we do work closely with them because at least for me, it's nice to have that double check to make sure that everything that we send is going to send to insurance is going to be 100%. Like we're not going to be wasting our time by having to go back to insurance with a bunch of appeals. There still is that possibility, and that does happen for a variety of reasons, but I do have a good relationship with the device companies for that exact reason of wanting to have just one more double check. That is not required, and some clinicians choose not to do that, but know that that's just the process here. So I love this picture, and I think of the language journey with AAC as often having many peaks and many valleys, or often coming up on different turns in the path and figuring out how are we going to navigate this. Things change and the weather changes like on this mountain, and we need to figure out what is going to be the best option for moving forward. And that's where I really think that an AAC evaluation can be helpful in problem solving that. And I really encourage you to consider that along your journey, especially because we all kind of get stuck sometimes, and it's always nice to have an opportunity to brainstorm with others. So finding the AAC specialist. And I would recommend that you ask some of these questions to your current speech therapist if you are pursuing AAC, to really find out what options or what experience do they have with working with devices or working with augmentative and alternative communication. So let's go through a couple of these questions and some possible responses we may get. Do you have experience working with a variety of devices? I think this is a great question because we all have our favorite devices. However, we need someone who's an expert in a variety of devices so that we can adequately teach the child how to use the device, but then also understand the advantages and disadvantages of each system. And that's from the ins and outs of programming to tech support to the language itself. And then we want to make sure that it's matching the child's needs and learning style. I really do find that most children are able to learn any of the devices, and I think that's true because a child, if they're exposed to English their whole life, they're going to speak English. And if they move to a new place and are exposed to that new language, they will learn that new language too. It just takes time and practice and consistency. So, but there is a component to making sure that the child's learning style and needs are met especially when it comes to vision, motor, and some of those other components that we've already discussed. And if a clinician says, no, they do not have experience working with a variety of devices, I don't want that to be a bad response. I don't want that to be immediately interpreted as, oh, we got to find a new speech therapist. I want to know, is that speech therapist saying, no, but I'm really excited about working with your child and I really want to learn how to support them better. So I'm going to seek out a mentor. I think that's a great response. And I think having a positive and consistent relationship with your child can be a really, really wonderful thing. So if they say no, pause and wait to see if they'll say more. Because maybe they'll also say no, and I'm really not comfortable with it. And then that's a really great discussion to have together and say, okay, well, you are great, but how can we work on this together? And, maybe that's a referral to an outside source and then coming back for other targets that you may be working on. Do you have access to a variety of devices? And this, I think, is also important because here I have a closet full of devices that I have at my ready. So, and a bunch of key guards and other tools that make the device successful, mounts, things like that. So I'm able to pop into the closet and try something out on the whim, on the fly. And I think having that access to really problem solve and try different things can really make the process very efficient, as well as getting to really see in the moment how your child is responding to these different supports. So that would be the reason why I think that it's important to have access to a variety of devices. And a clinician may say no, they may not have a closet like we do here, but they may be really willing to coordinate with school teams or with different companies to make sure that the devices can be received on loan. The caveat with that is it takes time to get devices on loan, and there may not always be the device that you want to try at the time that you're able to try it. And if they say no, you may ask what are the options that can be explored, because maybe they're not quite sure how to support in that moment too. What is your experience funding a speech generating device? So I am constantly in the process of funding device reports or funding devices. Well, usually have a handful going at a time. I try to be cognizant of not having too many so that I can give those reports my full attention. So I would say, if someone says they're doing 2,000 reports a year, that's a lot of reports. And, are they able to give all of those reports their time? That's a lot of work. But so an SLP with expertise in AAC will be familiar with the funding process, which is absolutely what we want, and that they're going to be efficient in getting you the device. And, if problems do arise, having had experience of doing funding reports, you usually have to go through some of those hurdles at some point and go through the appeals process. And it's not fun, but usually if you've been able to navigate that a few times, you can make it go through, or the speech therapist will be able to handle it a little bit easier and better each time. So, and if a speech therapist says no, that they do not have experience funding devices, again, I think that's going back to having mentorship of another SLP or another person that's been down that road, and funding a device can be really important. So that may also include someone from the device company themselves to help guide and support. And I would say that it's not a bad thing. I think that we all are beginners at some point. I was a beginner and I had to learn. And so I am very grateful to those families that were willing to work with me in that process as I was completing those initial funding reports. What communication systems are you most comfortable with? And SLPs, like I mentioned before, may have a preference for a device. We all have different ways of learning and thinking, but ultimately we want a therapist that's able to be comfortable with a variety of devices so that they do not have as much of a bias. It's really, even for me, it feels like it's easy for me to show certain devices, but maybe the newest app that's out, I'm not as familiar with. And so when I try it with a child, I'm searching for buttons and I'm trying to show them how to use it, but I also am the one trying to teach myself to use it. And really, that's not appropriate. I need to be practicing with that app outside of those appointments to make sure that I'm truly teaching in a way that's efficient and meaningful to the child and not teaching myself in the moment. So, in addition, we don't want our biases to come out if we're really good at using one and not being able to really teach the others. So if they say that they're really only comfortable with one, ask them what their plan is to gain familiarity. Are they going to be working with device companies to get devices on loan to practice outside of their therapy sessions, or likewise on their own time? An AAC therapist recommended an AAC system. Amazing. Now what? And the goal is language. These AAC systems are a focus, but they shouldn't be the only focus. We need to be careful not to get hung up on the mechanics or the technology, because that's really not our focus. Our focus is language. And so that's the goal. Let's learn and let's teach language. And the first step to this is going to be making a commitment to honor and accept your child's communication. I talked about this earlier in the presentation about how when we all use phones and pens and a variety of tools, and we want others to accept those tools. We want people to recognize if a letter comes in the mail that we will read it or get an email, and our children deserve the same acceptance of language, however they choose to use it. So giving them access to the tool is going to be predominant and primary. They got to have access to it to be able to use it. But then also caregivers, I really encourage you to make a commitment to learning to use the device. The better you know the device, the better your child will know the device, because they're going to see you using it. And I think that making a commitment to getting training specifically on communication partner strategies is so critical to this process. We know how to speak language. We've never had to really think about it as intently as when a child can't speak language. And so thinking about what tools or what strategies are really going to make that child successful are not as intuitive, or don't necessarily come as naturally to us when we don't think about it. So getting specific training is really a recommendation, and I highly encourage you to do it. There are several programs out there. Search for communication partner strategies and you'll find some. And then remember to try your best today and to know that tomorrow you get to try again. And I say this because I think we all need a little bit of grace. I always want you to try your very best, whether that's modeling communication as much as you possibly can, but then recognizing that you don't know every word in that device on day one, so you'll need to try again tomorrow. Bridging skills. I really want us to think about going back to that communication matrix and thinking about the skills that your child is already showing you. They're showing you that they're jiggling that door handle. They want to go out. They want to open the door. So how are we going to teach them that language, those words? And we're going to do that by showing them on the device, saying, oh yeah, you want to go out. Perfect. Let's hit out and let's go. And I think that this goes back to an analogy of using a piano or playing a piano. It takes time. You know, it's really easy to bang on the piano, but to really make it sound like Mozart is a totally different story. It takes the time, the practice, a good teacher, and someone who's really able to make it fun. Really finding the fun, I think, is what makes playing the piano or learning to communicate with a device the crux, what makes a huge difference. And so another part of this, and this goes back to jiggling the doorknob, is that you're showing your child another way to communicate. And that's okay, just showing them, being okay showing your child, because we need to be able to bridge those skills, and we're going to bridge those skills by showing them. So the last piece I want to talk about today is communication partners. And I've mentioned this several times and I haven't quite defined it yet. So a communication partner is anyone and everyone. Anyone you talk to is someone you're communicating with, and that makes them your communication partner. What research has found, though, is that communication partners have a hard time knowing what to do, especially when someone who is non-speaking doesn't communicate the way they do. And we can also look at, this is a graphic or an image from Social Networks, which is by Sarah Blackstone and Hungberg in 2012. And this is such a great tool of thinking about what are the circles of individuals that your child is being exposed to. And really thinking about, why does your child need lots of communication partners? And it comes down to, we want your child to be communicating with everyone from a very young age, because if they can learn these skills now, when they're adults, they'll be able to maintain relationships easier because they already know how to foster that relationship. They already are developing the skills to be able to communicate with people across circles. And the reason why we thinking of these circles is so distinct is because at home, my family has their own language in a way. We speak in a way that is maybe silly or funny. We have inside jokes that most others won't understand. And that's okay, because it's just the jokes and the way we talk to each other is internal for our family, right? And so when we go further out, though, my communication style changes. And likewise, we would expect those communication styles for your child to change. So I think diving into this communication partner component is so critical to really think about how we support your child in developing these relationships beyond just speaking to family members, or a lot of times speaking to paid staff, like the recreation center staff or your speech therapist. We want to develop circles of people across the spectrum, right? We want everyone for your child to be able to communicate with. And being cognizant of what circles are more full than other can be one way to identify what strategies your child needs to start working on to then fill in those other circles. So I just want to say thank you so much. It has been a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you to the Angelman for the opportunity to present. I am so grateful. And I very much wish you a happy and successful language journey. AAC is amazing, and it can open up so many opportunities. And I hope that all of those opportunities come to you and your family. Thank you.